this year and this year only, students who are in their first 3 years as English language learners will be excluded from the calculations. That does not mean that will be in place going forward. And any of the retests for first and second administration for the SSI grades, grade 5 and 8, are included. So, this is the formula that basically tells you how you calculate it. You look at the number of kiddos that met the standard in place for this year over the total number of tests taken for each one of those subject areas, and what's the ratio. When you look at it, and this is kind of just a sample piece of data of what it would be, while this shows one campus, or it could be a district, or at those particular grade levels, it's really looking at every grade level, every subject area, and it's also looking at every one of the race ethnicity groups in addition to special education and English language learners. So when you look at this, you look then for the total number of kids tested, the total number of kids who met, you look for the ratio, and that's where you get your index score from. Pretty straightforward. Now let's look at index 2. This is the one that's star-weighted growth. When we look at this, this is really about how much did kids grow year over year, not just pass and pass, but really looking at their scale score and what should be the anticipated growth line. If they meet what TEA determines as the scale interval that would be most likely, then you get 1 point for each one of those kiddos. If they exceeded that, grew more than that, what should be the expected level of growth, then you get 2 points. We don't have this data yet. But what you need to realize is that this index, it will be evaluated for every single student in every single race ethnicity category, as well as all students, English language learners, and special ed, for every group that meets the criteria of 25 students or more. So, can I get that one? No, I can't do that one because I don't have the information just yet. Index 3, this is the closing performance tab. Same type of idea, our snapshot kids. It's all types of tests and every imaginable test that we give. Again, English language learners are excluded this year and this year only. Retest results are included. And really what this is not looking at gaps between groups, but looking at gaps that are towards the standard. So the groups that are measured here are economically disadvantaged and up to your 2 lowest performing race ethnicity groups based on Index 1, your student achievement indicator, as reported in the prior year. So we have to go and look back to last year's results in order to determine which 2 groups we're going to compare with this year's economically disadvantaged towards the standard that is set for this year. And again, those minimum group size are 25. So let's look at how we calculate this. First thing you have to do is look for your group size. So as you look at, and this is showing the race ethnicity groups here to the left, and then reading, and you can think of where the tear is, it's really all the other subject areas would be listed as well. So you'd have reading and math, science, social studies, and writing. You would look at your tested category to look for group size, because remember it's 25, and so you'd be saying, okay, which groups do I consider? And then the next thing would be to do is look at the group performance. Which 2 were the lowest performing groups? And again, this is based on last year's data. So for the example that's here, it would be African American and Hispanic were the 2 lowest groups, performing groups that met the group size criteria. And this is on the total, not just on individual tests, but on the total number of tests. Okay? So then you have to take and look at each individual subject area, the economically disadvantaged category, as well as your 2 lowest performing groups. Okay? And what you're looking then for, what are your total maximum points can you get for each one of those particular subject areas? And the maximum points could vary, because it will always be economically disadvantaged. There is no minimum size for that particular category, that particular group. But it is possible that you could have one of your lower performing subgroups would not be counted for when you get down into the level of the individual test. And this is primarily at a campus level, because they don't meet that size requirement. So, as for example, in the reading one here, the economically disadvantaged African American Hispanic would count in this particular case maximum points of 300, However, in science, it would only be 200 because the African American group is not large enough to count. And I don't mean that they don't count, but to be factored into the calculation. Okay? So you then look at then what are the maximum points that you would, what are the total points that were earned, and then for each subject area, you take the total points, the total maximum points, look at the ratio between those, and that gives you your score for this particular index. Index 4 is the post-secondary readiness. Now, the district is evaluated in Index 4 this year, as well as our high school campuses. Our elementary campuses will, elementary and middle school campuses will not, because this year, and this year only, it's limited to graduation rates, as well as the type of graduation plan students were on. So as we've talked in the past about completion rates and graduation rates, as part of our accountability factor, and really completion rates, it is now shifted to either the 4-year or the 5-year graduation rate. And this is looking at those longitudinal cohorts of kids who start in 9th grade and then how many complete and actually graduate in 4 years or in 5 years. And again, this is all students, English language learners, special education, the 7 race ethnicities, and there is a group size of 25 for the subgroups. In addition, you're looking at recommended versus distinguished achievement plans, the annual rate. It's not about the kids in that particular cohort. It has to do with just every kid that graduated the year before, whether they were a 4-year graduate, a 5-year graduate, a 6-year graduate, or an early graduate. What type of diploma plan did they graduate on? And you're looking again at the ratio of those to the total number of graduates. Again, it's the same categories. So when you calculate this, you're looking at the 4-year graduation rate. And again, this is a sample for cohort 2012, cohort 2011 for the 5-year graduation rate, and then looking at the most recent ADIS report for basically your recommended distinguished achievement plan, what the total possible points could be. You can only count either the 4-year or the 5-year graduation rate in the total, so you have to figure out which one gives you the most points. Take the better of the two, total line. You can't mix and match groups across them. You have to take the total line, because sometimes a particular race ethnicity group will count 1 year, will be factored in, and another year they may not. So then you look at your total points, and in this example here, the index score is an 87. So you put that all together, and what does it look like for the district? If you want to go back and look at the first column with the red number on the top of it is the actual index score that you must meet. The column, the little bit lighter blue than that, but darker than the last one, the one with like the 85, the 71, and the 84, indicates if this system had been in place last year, what would our district score have been on each one of these indices. And then on the last bar is what we are projecting it would be for this coming year, or this year we just passed, or just finishing up. And again, index 2 cannot be calculated because we do not know what those expected levels of growth are, and we do not have that information from the yet. It gives you an idea of where we are and where we're going. So really, when you think about where we are in these particular pieces, it's all of those individual test pieces, and it's kind of hard to think about, so now what are we into that, and which groups counted there, and which ones weren't. Sometimes it's easier to look at those individual test data pieces. And what this is really, if we look at the overall district performance compared to the state, because we don't have region or individual comparison districts that we generally like to look and evaluate ourselves with. We do have some state data based on first-time test scores for each of the subject areas by grade level. What you can see is where we are, where we stand relative to other scores within the state. And by and large, we are ahead of the state. You may look at it and say, well, wait a minute, what happened with 7th grade math? Why is that so low? Why are we showing a negative there? Remember that the in statute also is that if students have received instruction in all of the TEKS and they are in an above grade level class, so our 7th grade honor students, they receive instruction in all of the 8th grade TEKS, Our 7th grade honor students this year took the 8th grade test on the first day of registration. So their results are reflected in the grade 8 math score, not in the grade 7 math score. Likewise, our grade 8 students who were in Algebra 1, their math scores are reflected in Algebra 1, not in 8th grade math. So it really is not about the student's grade level, it's about the level of test they took. When we go back in and factor in second administration, we show even more significant gains on the 8th grade math. But actually, that number rises to 14% above the state was in the first administration.
So to understand the explanation, without our honor students, we are 7 points behind?
Well, what you have to think about is who is the state including in? Not every district. It was a district decision on where you place those students on which district. And some districts will say they don't teach all of the 8th grade. It's how they arrange their curriculum. So if I am in another district and they don't do the accelerated math quite the same way that we do it, their 7th grade students do not receive instruction in all of the 8th grade TEKS, then it's quite possible that they took the 7th grade math test. And they may be taking the algebra test the next year as 8th graders when they're enrolled in algebra. It's a hard thing to do a comparison to comparison.
Will there ever be a way that we can draw a comparison across similar districts?
If we know exactly which test their kids took on each thing, at each time, then yes, you could look at and say, because it gets to be.
I guess I'm confused. I mean, aren't the rest of the districts doing what we're doing with their honors kids? They're taking it above grade level, but it doesn't make any sense.
No, it's.
So we're saying that we are the unique district in the state of Texas.
There are others.
No, yeah, there are absolutely others. The fine line, and where districts have discretion, is we're all accelerating in math. But in Humble ISD, I'm going to take the position from a curriculum standpoint that our honors 7th grade students really are covering 80% of the 8th grade TEKS. If I declare that, say
The
again.
curriculum is designed to receive instruction in all of them.
I understand that, but I'm using the example.
Oh, okay.
If I take the position in our district that our honors 7th graders are going to take 80% of the 8th grade TEKS, they're going to take 7th grade STAR. If I choose to declare that our 7th grade honors students are going to take 100% of the 8th grade TEKS, then our kids, those kids are going to take 8th grade STAR.
So what you're telling me is that we're unique in that aspect.
There are some other districts, but not many districts.
Really what we're saying, Mrs. Pez, is we're not all the same.
I thought I read it in this last package of information we got. Just that issue of, they kind of sound like they solved that problem. We wouldn't have to, we were able to let them take the 8th grade math, but they weren't penalized by the testing. I agree.
Dr. Price?
Are you referring to the fact that if I'm an 8th grade student who's subject to Student Success Initiative, if I'm not successful on my state assessment, then I cannot be automatically promoted to the next grade?
No, I thought.
Because students who are accelerating.
You were taking the advanced, let's say, some graders taking the 8th grade math, but they weren't forced to take the 8th grade test?
No, they can't be, you can't require them to take the 7th grade test and the 8th grade test. They can only take one.
Oh, maybe that's right.
Yeah.
I just saw that. This I'm sorry with that.
But I think it goes back to what Carol said, the percentage of what's being taught is what we use as the meter as to which test we show are taking. And the legislature did address that when we March change. And percentage, it gives us more of a leniency when we go and test them on your 7th grade. It's not necessarily go back to the advanced math because we had that discussion in 5th and 6th grade.
Right.
And it's not an automatic like it used to be. If you taught majority of the subject area above the grade level, you automatically, and that was one of the things that was holding us back, automatically had to teach testing at that grade level, and I want to say that was changed.
Right, in the old system, it was you're a seventh grader, didn't matter what type of math you were taking, you took the seventh grade math test, whether you were receiving instruction that year in it or not. And that could put a kid at a disadvantage too, if they're not, right on top of, because sometimes it's about, just being familiar and maybe a little foggy in a way.
To Mr. Lopez's point, are we unduly penalizing ourselves by?
Really, when we
Because
look-
people see this,
okay.
and Jack was his
All right,
reaction
but
is.
all right, that's.
Or is this a result of maybe some of our curriculum? In particular,
When we
maybe
look
something
at-
as the
okay.
initials MI.
Maybe this will help to clarify. When we look at those seventh grade honor students who took eighth grade math tests, and we look at their success rate on the test, it is like 99.9% of the kids pass.
Well, I'm
So,
I look
mean-
at outcomes, and,
Mhm.
and this is, you guys are saying this is some deviation. I don't know what it is.
What it
It
says
jumps
is
out.
that
It
you're
jumps
not-
out like a sore thumb in this deal. We've talked about math a lot.
But
over the
what
last
I'm
few
saying to you,
weeks.
Mr. Lopez, is that our seventh grade honor students that took the eighth grade test, virtually everyone passed. The eighth grade test.
Oh, that's great. I'm happy.
So-
Now, my point is that our seventh graders are obviously 7 percentage points behind the average of the state. And so
The seventh grade on level.
they're on level.
Right,
And so
but it comes down to, are you comparing them against all other seventh grade on level?
my point is very simply is this: Are we cutting this data correctly? Are we 100% sure that that is the reason, or is there another problem? How are we reading this data? Because that's how we judge how we're doing. I'm not going to give you guys a lecture. You guys know this. That's how we judge how we're doing. If something is wrong, if you see, Jim used to. What was Jim's
Yeah.
last name?
Eggers.
No, not Jim Eggers, Jim Parsons.
Oh, okay.
Used to always say, when you have something on this, it is like a dashboard blinking light.
And
There's a
it-
problem.
this-
And so if that is, if we see something like this, let's get to the bottom of it. If you guys think that that is it, I have a problem with that explanation because it doesn't completely jive with me, but I would like to dig into that. And so that just, this is what we look at as a board. This is what we evaluate how we're doing as a district at our high level. And so I see something like this, it just jumps out at me. That's it.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
Do we have to, when we're looking at our grade level scores, do we have to take our seventh graders that took the eighth grade test and move them to the eighth grade? I mean, is that, in other words, the seventh graders that took the eighth grade test, they're factored into the eighth grade numbers, not the seventh grade numbers. Is that a state mandate, or is
Because
that?
the test they took is grade 8 math.
No, I mean, I understand
Yeah.
that, so that's a state mandate situation.
The
Okay.
state mandates if you teach 100% of the TEKS at a grade level, that is the grade level test that those kids take.
No, I understand that, I understand that.
And
but
when
it
the
would-
results come back, this is not saying students who were in eighth grade, how well did they do? It's saying students who took the eighth grade
Right.
test, this is how we compare to whatever the state has in their aggregate of students who took the eighth grade test and students who took the seventh grade test. I would say, Mr. Lopez, when you ask about the seventh graders, there are probably more districts that do have seventh graders who may be in honors that are taking the seventh grade test than are taking the eighth grade test. And when you do a straw poll of districts in our area, more of them do have their kids take the seventh grade test. Is this something that we will look at and evaluate?
Absolutely.
Is this the appropriate thing? Yes.
Carol, we can beat this, the horse is bloody and dead on the ground.
Okay.
Let's move on. We'll talk about this later. This is also something that, we have members of the program evaluation committee here.
Right.
This is stuff we'll talk about in that
Right.
committee as well, so.
And I wanted to present it to you because these are types of numbers that you will see, and I don't want you to be taken by surprise when you see them, and try to give you some of the explanation of why we have reason to believe. Now, I can slice and dice this in different ways,
Well,
but truly when it's the eighth grade test or the seventh grade test, this is what it is. Okay?
Real quick, and I don't want to beat it to death, but see what if we put all of our seventh graders in a bucket together, what would our score be, even though some did take the eighth grade test? And what percentage of our seventh graders are on level, what percent took that advanced class? So we would have a better idea of where our math curriculum is today as it relates to the number of kids. I think that would answer a lot of these questions that we're looking at when you see it.
Yeah, and that's what I said, I can slice it another way, but
Yeah. So-
what I can't do is divide the state number in any way to
Right.
know what in that seventh grade math test is represented by eighth graders or ninth graders or fifth graders or whatever. That, I have to just take it at face value that it's all students who took the seventh grade.
That's the benchmark, though. We gotta live with it.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. But I'm just concerned, would that be masking the issue, though, if we
It does.
Because I think the better question
Yeah.
is, as Mr. Lopez said, is there some other underlying cause
Right.
that we need to?
What we do is when we look at
You
this,
guys.
just like when you look at the eighth grade score there, you can look at that and say, well, how well did the eighth grade on level kids do versus when you have those seventh grade honors math kids in there. And so you have to look at and pull those apart. And that's part of the evaluation that you use when you're looking at how well was the curriculum taught. And then at what level. If you mix them all together, much like we've done in the past when we got eighth grade in the past, you think about it, included algebra as well as eighth grade, just like seventh grade in the past included honors versus level. And so if you had a very high score, it could be looking, unless you drill down into, the individual classrooms to say, is it the honors, is it the level, where's the strength, where's the deficit, where do we need to do, how do we need to teach differently in different places or at different levels? That's where you have to get into and drill into.
No, I mean, that obviously is what how you have to
Yeah.
use the data. My only concern again is, are we evaluating, doing that evaluation process in this? But again, that's a program evaluation deal.
Right.
We'll talk about that. Awesome. This was
Okay.
very.
Not done yet.
Oh, you're not done yet? I was hoping. you
So
were.
sorry. Going forward, remember, everything that I've told you about 2013 stands alone. 2013 is a unique year because even before all of the changes that happened in the legislative process at the end with House Bill 5 and the other bills around accountability, state assessment, things along those lines, there were going to be changes for 2014. But what we do know is, yes, we know that those targets are going to still be in place for index 1, 2, 3, and 4. What we don't know is, could they change? They could quite possibly. There could be other things that be added or subtracted. English language learner students, only first-year students will be excluded going forward from the calculations in order to give them that full year of instruction in order to build a foundation. Index 3 will have additional criteria next year. What will be added is level 3, the advanced performance standard. For students who meet that particular standard, you will get double points. It will be double weighted in the scoring points for that. So having more students score at the advanced level becomes more critical in the weighting of that index. As well as an index score, all of our campuses will be evaluated using this criteria. Our high schools will also have this criteria added. And this is final level 2 standard for all of the 8 subgroup, the grade 8, all and the race ethnicity groups combined overall subjects. If they meet final level 2 performance on one or more tests, this will be the criteria. This will be their evaluation at middle school and elementary school completely for index 4. It will become part of the index for the high schools. It will be part of the index for the district as well. So that's what we know. We also know that there are other indicators that are being added that we will have to work on this year in order to be reporting to TEA and things around fine arts, physical education, health and wellness, second language acquisition, and a number of other programs that we will also be added into the whole accountability system as well. What we do know, this is a start point. We're on that ladder moving forward.
Who worked on this?
What do you mean on
The
this?
education committee or in the legislature? Where did we get on this? Who came up with all, who's at fault here?
So, what do you mean,
No.
what do you mean, the
Everything you
PowerPoint, or do
just.
you mean?
No, that, you did an awesome job. No.
It's TEA.
TEA?
It's TEA.
Completely.
Well, TEA takes, of course, whatever is enacted by the legislature,
Right.
and they have to act upon it. And as I said, this started back in the 81st legislative session, and then it's been moving forward. And it's not done, because now this does not incorporate a lot of the changes that were passed in this 83rd session.
What happened to the labels? You mentioned the ABCD.
That is not scheduled to come into play. That's in House Bill 5, and it's 2015-16, and the ABCD will be for districts. And they, in the language there, it is the old exemplary, recognized, acceptable, unacceptable for campuses. That's what it stands right now, but we have another legislative session before those come. So who knows what will happen.
That's exactly right. That's not by coincidence that it doesn't take effect till the year after the next legislative session.
Any other questions? Costanzo? No? Carol, thank you so much. Thank.
As you think of questions, just let me know.
And you'll send us an email about the question about the self-care.
I'll be working on it.
Appreciate that. Wellness